Everyone, it's our Commissioner Status Updates, Tuesday morning, April 18th, 2023, 10 a.m. And in attendance are Commissioners Brooks, Matari, and Duncan. Are there any changes to the agenda? All right, hearing none. Our first item is Facilities 2-Year Plan and Working Group. So a couple years ago, I kind of put some stuff together after understanding what the facility needs of the county were, and it kind of looked like a 2-year, 5-year, 10-year plan. Today, I only wanted to bring up the 2-year plan because there's a lot of moving parts, and what I'm hoping to do is get support to have a working group to vet some of these things out. And this kind of coincides with item 2 on our agenda as well. KCSO's move to Kootenai County North. So some of the ideas in the 2-year plan are finish the 58,000 square foot expansion of the Justice Center, which is going to alleviate problems in courts, prosecuting attorneys, judges, specialty court, IT, because when the civil lawyers move to the expansion, then IT can expand into the third floor civil area. County assistants and treasurer swap, so we're getting quotes on that. And then solidify moves to Kootenai County North. So we had that presentation from the Sheriff's Department, and I'm also still don't want to close the door on a motor vehicle license or a driver's license window there, but that can be years down the line. And then there's options for if the sheriff does move out to Kootenai North. Community development is one, which there's some kinks that have to be worked out in that situation. If the Compton building is empty, then we could also look at potentially having PMR on-site clinic there. 911, maybe we could have the primary in that building and the backup remain on Julia, and then GIS could move to Julia Street. So there's just a whole bunch of things here that I would really like a working group of some stakeholders to go in and look at the unintended consequences of these moves. Then the other department moves as space becomes available, making continuity of service a priority. So right now we're looking at the prosecutor getting some temporary space, and then potentially if community development goes out to the Sheriff's Department, then HR can move into the community development space. Then a big thing that I don't really think has been talked about in public before is I think that being able to sell the Juvenile Justice Center on 4th Street and construct 2 courtrooms and office space at juvenile detention. They have room on the north side of their building to expand out that way. So that would cover, they would no longer have to transport juveniles. So having the 2 courtrooms and office space, and then juvenile probation would be there. And those are 2 teams that work 2 departments that work really, really close together. And so that's something that, I'd like to have the working group kind of vet out a little bit. And then build out jail pods with proofing, with staffing availability. And then the annex may be open. And then I also want to kind of have a discussion on elections, but I think elections is going to be more of a 5 to 10 year plan, unless, somebody else has some ideas that crop up. So those are just kind of the ideas that I wanted to explore at this point, and it takes care of some needs that are imminent. And then it also allows some things that in the 2-year to 5-year range that we can address going forward. My ideas for working group would be IT, AMP, KCSO, community development, prosecutor, and building and grounds. And
I'm sorry.
yeah,
Can you say that again? That was pretty quick.
sorry. IT.
IT?
Yeah, they need to be involved in all the moves.
Uh-huh.
Adult misdemeanor probation, KCSO, community development, prosecutor's office, and building and grounds. And if there's another department too, that that wants to be in on this, but I think concentrating on just the next 2 years for facilities, I narrowed it down to those specific departments. And then I would imagine probably in the next month or two, I can throw out some ideas for 5 years and 10 years. But I just wanted to take it a little bit slow in the beginning because I really think that working group is crucial at this point because I think there's things that just the commissioners can't see.
Would you share that piece of paper you have, that memo?
Yeah, I'll clean it up and make complete sentences and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Yeah.
The one thing that and talking about future plans and 2-year plans or even 30-day plans right now, and I'm sounding like a broken record, is those pods at the jail need to be worked on because what is the population today?
514.
And we're supposed to have,
361.
so if somebody filed a lawsuit, it's almost prima facie, we're in violation of what we should be doing. Is that,
It's certainly a concern.
Yeah.
who would do that? Like ACLU or somebody like that?
Well, luckily, we already have quotes.
Well, that's nice, but
Yeah, so
I don't think a
that's-
judge is going to be impressed that we've got some quotes.
Well, that's the first step. Then they have to come before us with the quotes, and then we can allocate funds to go, and we have to go out to bid and do that whole process. So that was step one.
Let's do it quick.
Okay, so.
Well, I think this is more about just how we move people around based upon the space that we have. You know, I agree with Commissioner Brooks. We got to look at this, and the sooner the better, so we can make decisions and move on with it.
We can do more than one thing at a time, right?
Well, depends on how hard everybody wants to work.
That's what we're getting paid for.
Well, I mean, I'm fine if some people want to get together and just talk about how best to divvy up the space. I think that, you know, it'd be easier if we just got all the potentially affected parties to at least have an opportunity to say, this is where I would like to be if we're going to move, before anyone has to be told what to do. And then the only other thing I would suggest is just a little bit of contingency planning. And I only say this because I'm open to the idea of getting a final bid that a contractor can be locked in on for the Justice Center. And don't get me wrong, I recognize the challenges with space. But this building is kind of crept up in expense, and there has to be some line in the sand that if it goes beyond that, we have to start thinking of Plan B, if you will.
Well, that's the problem. Plan B is not going to get any cheaper either, because now we're going to have to go out and try to figure that out. So it is our best option. I do understand about the price, but at this point, I don't see how we're going to get around it, because you want to talk about lawsuits, the judges can absolutely sue the county commissioners for not providing them adequate facilities.
Well, that's fine. I understand that. But I mean, what if, let's just play the pretend game that, you know, that comes in at 50 million.
Yeah. Well,
I realize that may not be realistic, but there has to be a B. And the other thing too is that, in fairness, the commercial real estate market looks like it's about to tank. Default rates are starting to happen in commercial real estate, and you know, the option to be able to buy a building for a lot less than building is starting to maybe get on the table. So that's what I mean by Plan B. To not have a Plan B, I think, is not prudent. It doesn't mean that we have to go to it or look to it.
Sure.
I mean,
I just don't want to spend a lot of time on Plan B until we know Plan A is not going to work.
we don't have to spend a lot of time, but at least just, you know, have a couple options there. It just seems prudent. But I think as far as like who's involved with the moves, in quote, or in plural, when KEC opens up, yeah, sure, it makes sense.
Yeah, so we can just go right into number 2. So there's, Lieutenant Klinkfus, have you had any conversations with the city of Hayden? Because we probably need to get them out there and on board too. to find out what they're going to require?
Yes, ma'am, I have not. That's one of the things that we need to broach here quickly. The sheriff can probably weigh in on this too. There's been some concerns possibly brought up that we need to broach with them to make sure that they're on board with certain changes we may make up there. But again, we've been kind of waiting from guidance from the board. You know, we don't want to burn a lot of calories on something if it's not going to move forward, so.
I haven't seen any red flags yet. I've seen, a couple challenges that we'll have to overcome, but at this point, I haven't seen any red flags. That's kind of why I wanted this working group to kind of bounce some things off of to make sure that, number one, we're all on the same page, and number two, that there's no hidden thing, and you guys get half moved over there, and all of a sudden there's this dumpster fire that now we can't put out. So I think that the city of Hayden would be on board to walk through the building and look at some of your changes to find out what they're going to require. And then another thing that I thought of is, how many times do units respond code 3 from the station? I would think it's pretty.
It happens.
But it's pretty
But not
rare.
it's not as much as you think, yeah.
Yeah.
Generally would be from like briefing from the start of the shift. You know, if an emergency call comes out, and a couple times a week possibly, I mean.
Okay, because you have a 2-year construction window on Hayden and Ramsey and probably Atlas and
Right.
Atlas and Hayden as well. So you guys are gonna have to figure out how you get out
Of course.
that location. That's why I kind of wanted the working group, so you could work through some of these things before we spent a lot of time and money moving you guys that direction. So
Can't be any worse than government in Dalton.
there is that.
Yeah.
There's that. So, yeah, I mean, I hope it would be actually even better. But, you can't go just down Dakota to get to 95.
Right.
So that's kind of the whole, you got to figure that out. Because if you guys have units going north, then you may need to go out to Atlas and Hayden, and then go all the way down Hayden. That's
Sure.
kind of a long way. So, but just some thoughts and ideas. I'm kind of excited to have that explored, and seems like, in my mind, in facility planning, I want to keep everybody together. So right now, you guys are a little bit scattered, and it would be nice to get the prosecutor in one location. It's just nice to have like with like. And eventually, if we can bring elections back on campus, that might work out too. Huh? No, on campus here. So that's 5-year, 10-year plan stuff. So, yeah. Yeah, so, yeah, that's just kind of where I'm at. So I can clean this up a little bit and get it to you guys. And we can continue to have discussions. So are you both in support of a working group with those named departments?
Yes, and it depends on who's going to be on the working group and how many people.
Okay,
You get too many people and it's a hodgepodge. You get too few people and there's no real working group. It's just one person's opinion.
yeah, I was hoping just to start with one person from each group, because already that's 6 people, 7 with a commissioner. So I think that that's sufficient at this point.
How long do you think it would take before the working group comes up with a final recommendation?
I would say 30 days.
Okay, so it'd be quick. Yeah.
Yep. So if you guys are okay, I'll send out personal invitations to people in those groups, and Sheriff, you're welcome to appoint whoever you would like to this working group.
And then after 30 days, it would basically be with the Kootenai campus opened up, where all the different departments, how they could fill up the
that's
space
open.
that would open up. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I didn't even address the old courthouse yet, because we're gonna have a lot of space there. And it was, at one point, we thought district court clerks were gonna go in the old courthouse, but they may have enough room in the new one that they may not have to go there. So there may be some very good opportunities in the old courthouse.
Okay.
So, yep. All right, anything else on facilities 2-year plan, working group, or KCSO's move to Kootenai North?
Well,
The clerk has something.
Oh, sure.
I just wanted to know who was part of the working group. I missed that part, I think.
Yes, so it's IT, Adult Misdemeanor Probation, KCSO, Community Development, Prosecutor's Office, Building and Grounds.
Is this regarding just KEC and the jail then at that point?
Pretty much, yeah. Yep.
I just wanted to go on the record on April 18th, 2023, that the final cost on the Justice Building will be north of $50 million. I'd be shocked if it weren't.
Well, I imagine the building materials and stuff would start to go down if the commercial thing crashed, because you wouldn't have as much need for building materials and stuff like that, so.
Well, I think the commercial market's crashes because of the vacancy rates, that the work from home market has exploded.
Yeah.
And so what it is they just can't pay their mortgage notes. Not so much that they're trying to build more. I don't think there's going to be much in the way of construction moving forward. I mean, maybe in some regions, but
Right, well, that's what I'm saying, that's better for us, because then it makes our costs go down, especially if we're looking at the jail pods.
yeah.
So the initial bid could come in a lot lower than that. So that's good news. Okay. Stan is not here to talk about prosecutor's office space, so I would imagine that he and Keith have not come up with a temporary solution. So we can put that on for next week. And then our other item, Coeur d'Alene Economic Development Housing Survey. We did this, Bill, do you remember how many years ago that we had them do the survey? I guess it was in 2021.
Yeah, I don't, but
Okay, so,
I don't think it's particularly useful.
Yeah, what did they do with the last one?
I think they put it, they launched a data-driven initiative with Connect Kootenai, and that was their former regional housing growth issues partnership.
You know,
So,
I mean, I think one of the challenges is that as long as so many people want to move here, I don't understand how you're ever going to have affordable housing with such demand from outside the area. So I'm not,
Government can study it.
yeah, well,
That's what I find kind of comical is how do we get housing people can afford when we're not even close? We're 2 and 3 times more in income is needed to afford an average home here.
well, as long as you can sell your 2-bedroom home for $1 million, buy one here cash and have $500,000 left over, I don't see how
I
it'll
don't
ever.
think a lot of people are in that shape who live here and work.
No, they aren't.
so, are we going to entertain this, or no? I mean, they did it in 2021, and,
I say no.
You know, I mean, I don't see any reason to.
okay. So, I will give direction then.
I just got notice that our quarterly economic development update got canceled.
Yeah, she'll, most of the time, she's done it in writing. She's given us a quarterly report instead of
Okay.
coming before the board, so saves time. All right, public comments. Nothing, nobody online, okay, 10:19, meeting adjourned, thank you, everyone.